All it takes is one new idea to completely change everything. What's up, guys? It is Mighty Q with Mighty Q's Locker. And today what I wanted to do is, since the rule changes happen every 2 years and they just agreed on 13 of 14 new rules for the NCAA wrestling season that is going to be upcoming, I wanted to talk a little bit about these rule changes and what some of them are. I think they did a phenomenal job with this based on what the reasoning is behind it. So to get it started off, the first big one, it's no longer a 2-point takedown. They switched it to a 3-point takedown. And their reasoning behind this in reading and going through a lot of the conversations and the reason they wanted to do it is essentially when a guy gets taken down, and if you get taken down, you go to your back and you give up near fall, and you're down 5, 6, 7 points very early on in the match, it is essentially the match is over, is the way that they're phrasing it. It's, hey, having to get 2-point takedowns repeatedly against, a very good wrestler or something that's very hard. So if you give up a takedown and near fall and, you're essentially, if you give up, if the way that the rule point changes are this year, but it's like, you give up a 2-point takedown and 3 near fall, or, it was 4 for this year. But if you're down 6 points and it's the beginning of the first period, yes, you're still in the match and you can definitely work your way back, but it's a very, very difficult task and at the college level. And that's their reasoning of, hey, if it, requires 4 takedowns for you to get back in the match versus now it only requires 2, it's a lot more enticing to the ending of matches. So the one thing, though, is they did take away the hand touch takedown. So you have to actually have control, which, some people on the edge of the mat, when you're grabbing, a guy's ankles as he's essentially all the way off the mat, and, you have your toe drag and you're, barely, that's not a takedown. I've always hated that as a rule where it's okay, you're grabbing onto some dude's ankle, you have no control, you have no anything, that's not a takedown. You shouldn't get points for that. And so they got rid of that, which I think is good. So you're going to see more action. A lot of that action is going to be, I think, closer to the center of the mat, but it's still going to be an increase in actual action and scoring, which is my main gripe with folk style and why I like freestyle and Greco so much is folk style ends up being very passive. And that is another thing that they went in and attacked is there is a new rule change in terms of being active on top, and the top man must work to gain near fall or pin. There's already the 5-second rule that is in place on a near side, or not near, but any tight waist ankle. Any grasp of the ankle immediately starts a 5-second count, but it is now encouraged for the top wrestler to be working to score. We see this all the time where guys are kind of working to break down, but they're really just kind of sitting and holding, or they're switching back and forth. They're going from a tight waist ankle to a chop, back to a tight waist ankle. But what they're really doing is they're just sitting on the tight waist and the ankle. They're kind of driving forward, and they'll switch to a chop, and then maybe they'll get and fight for hands, and then they'll sit back on the tight waist ankle, and then they'll get the 3 seconds, and then they'll switch again. And so they're not really working for moves. They're working to kind of hang on. They're working to stall. So this is a very, very good rule change that is going to start to drastically shift the way that some of these wrestlers are going to go about wrestling the entirety of the match. Something that I feel could end up being, a very huge thing, and I think it should have kind of been this way from before, is how near fall is going to be scored. It's now 2 points, 3 points, or 4 points based on if you get a 2 count, 3 count, or 4 count. That makes so much sense, and that is a rule that they might just go ahead and staple that one to the wall and cement it on there because it makes so much sense. The days where you had to get a 5 count for 3 and all of that kind of weird stuff, it was like, hey, if you get 3 or 4, then you get 2, and if you get 5, you get 3, and then it switched, and now it's with the 4. So this makes a lot more sense. You get 2 counts, you get 2 points. You get 3 counts or 3 swipes, you get 3 points. You get 4 swipes, you get 4 points. Perfect makes so much sense. And now where this kind of comes in, where it gets interesting, where you start to combo that with the 3-point takedown. Think about if you have a takedown and you get your 3 points and it's a takedown to the back and you get a 4-point near fall. You're up 7-0 and the match just got started. So this is now in an effort where it's like, okay, well, now the same goes on the other hand, where it's like, okay, you give up an escape. It's now only a 2 takedown match. But not only is it only a 2 takedown match, it could be a takedown to 3 near fall that you give up, and now we're locked up 7-7. So I hopefully am going to see the scoring and the action increase in the sport. And I think this is something that the sport was kind of needing to do, I think, from a visual watching standpoint. I think it makes it a little bit more enjoyable. I think it makes it a little bit easier to watch with leading of action. And I think that's something that everyone wants to see. Like, that's part of the reason why people hate baseball, right? It's too slow. There's not enough going on. Basketball can kind of get that way. No one really cares during the regular season until it's playoffs. Same relatively goes for hockey. And then it's like as soon as it's playoff hockey, everyone's like, oh, yeah, let's go, because playoff hockey is incredible. So having this added scoring, having this new way of approaching how you're going to call stalling and how some of those counts are going to go, I think it's going to lead to an increase in action in the sport, and you're going to see kind of like what baseball is doing this year, where it's like, hey, by removing the shift, you're going to see either more hits or you're going to see more guys make great plays. And so either way, both things are really good for the sport. So you're either going to see guys get even better than they already were, which you're going to continue to see, but like you're going to see a giant increase in scoring, which is then going to lead and start to help on the team side, especially for like tournaments and whatnot when you talk about team points. But it's going to be more entertaining. It's going to be a lot easier to follow because I feel like it relatively simplified a lot of things down. Plus, I think with the other thing with the 3-point takedown is I've always felt that it's a lot harder to get a takedown than it is to get an escape. And the fact that an escape is worth half of what a takedown is worth, I think was a very good rule change now for the takedown. Because if I'm able to get a double leg on you and it took a lot of work and I had to fight through, three levels of defense to get the takedown, and, I barely was able to squeak it out, versus a lot of times in college you have so many guys who they're just go ahead, stand up. Like, hitting something off the whistle and knowing you have a really good stand-up is a lot easier to get up and out and create a quick scramble, to a quick loss of control to get up to your feet. And, it's a loss of control. You get your one. So I think that's another really cool thing, is now having that little bit more of a dispersion makes it a little bit more fitting to the points being awarded correctly. It should be interesting when it comes to seeing how some of the others get carried out. Like, I don't know how it's just going to depend on the referee and how well certain stall calls are enforced, if they're, being proactive about it, if they're really, monitoring and doing a good job on that. I think then you've got a chance to see a very good change. But if it's going to kind of be the same lackadaisical, you just kind of talk to them and say, hey, let's work it through. And, you're just giving them the 5 count, and guys are just kind of quickly changing and, getting to that 3 and 4 seconds, and then changing off again. I think that's going to need to be a slight tweak, but that's going to be something that's kind of hard to monitor and go with. It's just, I just don't like guys that stall to win. Like, wrestle the match. Like, stalling is not a form of wrestling. I've always said, yes, there is an active of defense and playing that way, but there's the art of not wrestling, and that's what stalling is. And I absolutely hate it. I can't stand it at all. If you're a person who wins matches by stalling, then I'm not a fan. I will stand tried and true about that. I could care less about the people that stall. I could care less what you win. It's not wrestling. You're not wrestling. You're not doing anything. It's weak. It's something that you should not do. Go out there to win the match. You're not going out there to play prevent. Like, go out there and wrestle. If you're a defensive wrestler and you counter, that's a lot different than stalling. You can go out there and be super proactive and super action-oriented, or you can be defensive and counter. But stalling, that's just not acceptable. Another random rule in there is they got rid of the beard length for college. So it was like a half inch or something like that. They got rid of the rule now on the beard. So you're going to see guys start to grow beards in college. And I wonder if it's going to start to transition. I wonder if you're going to start to see the progression where they start to get rid of headgear the same way that you do in freestyle and Greco, as most of these guys kind of really don't care anyways. And I mean, once you're essentially in high school, growing up in club, the funny part is no one ever wore their headgear except when you wrestle live. When you're drilling, no one wears headgear. And that's the one time when that's how you actually get cauliflower ear. You get the cauliflower ear from drilling in practice, and then everyone wants to throw the headgear on when you go and you wrestle live at practice for the the last 30 minutes of practice, or whatever it may be. You only wear it when you're wrestling live, and it's like, no, either wear your headgear for the whole practice while you're drilling, while you're live, or you don't wear it at all. And for those of you who are, I will say, 16 and under, because you can't drive yourself to get your ear drained, or you can't have someone do it for whatever, like, hey, I think if you're not in high school, I think you should be wearing headgear anyways. For all intents and purposes, hey, cauliflower ear is great and grand, and everyone like, oh yeah, it's a staple, it's a whatever. I just was never a fan of it. I like music and headphones way too much. I know too many people that have absolutely plastic ears that struggle with hearing, and they have to, find other ways of sleeping because it's uncomfortable to sleep on. And for me, the headphones thing was big because I have both, I enjoy both the earbuds and over-the-ear headphones. They both serve their purpose and have their thing. Like currently right now, like I record on corded headphones for these podcasts. It's just something I like better. It flows better for me. Plus, I just don't like the look of it. I've never liked the look. I did get cauliflower ear, and it did kind of start to swell up, but I went to the dermatologist and got mine cut twice. I didn't drain it. I'm not a fan of needles. I don't do them well. I got a bunch of I got a bunch of shots. I got it was 4 or 5 shots in one day as a kid, because I got them all at one time, and I just wasn't a fan, and just getting them all at once, I think it also was part when I got all my shots, I didn't feel great afterwards. And then there was a different time where I had to go and get shots, and I remember I got 3 shots that day. Same thing. I felt fine. There was really nothing to it, but I was just kind of ooh, I don't really feel very good. There was another time where I completely psyched myself out when I was, going to give blood, and just didn't eat, didn't drink that day, and psyched myself out anyways, and just not a fan of needles end of the day. And I was not really wanting to get my ear syringe drained, and I didn't want cauliflower ear anyways, so I went to the dermatologist and got mine cut twice, and now I have a very, very little, basically just barely smaller than a marble sized in my ear that is cauliflower ear, and it's just like everyone else's firm little rock that's in my ear, and that's exactly the way it's going to stand, and that's the way it's going to stay. But that's me and my take on the new rules for these next 2 years as the NCAA has implemented. They passed. It was 13 of 14. If you guys want to take a look at them, I believe Flow Wrestling put out I think they talked about all 13 that passed and the one that didn't pass as well. So if you guys want to go take a look at that, but this was, I think, what is going to end up being the biggest ones. Of course, the 3-point takedown is huge. The hand touch takedown is going to affect what gets called as takedowns, being active and actually working to score while on top. And then the ultimate simplified near fall with 2, 3, and 4 points based on 2, 3, or 4 swipes. So that's my take on these rules. I think they did a phenomenal job. They said it themselves. If people hate it, if it's scoring terribly, if it doesn't work, then ultimately they get to change it in 2 years. Like, it's not set in stone. It's nothing that, can't go back and be changed. I think it's going to be a fun 2 years of accumulating the data, seeing how it works, and seeing how wrestling changes going forward with these new kind of updated scoring systems and the new way that you're going to see guys going about it now. So that is it for me today. As always with you guys, if you like the show, just share it with a friend. That is the only thing that I will ask on this podcast. This is not a place that I'm, trying to promote or do anything. It's just, hey, I'm talking about some wrestling stuff. I'm talking about some life stuff. Hopefully can give you guys some encouragement. Hopefully can give you guys maybe some motivation, maybe can teach you something, give you a lesson, something of a mistake that I did where you can learn from. So like this was a conversation about some rules, and some of you that are wrestling in college might see your opinion or go and look and do something. You guys that are in high school are going to be there soon. They could still be implemented or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you enjoy the show, just share it with a friend. I would really appreciate it. So that is going to do it for me today. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. So that is it. I will see you later. Mighty Q out.